So it seems like the league is starting to adjust some of these drills to be more uh, football uh, focused. You don't get a lot from Howie there unless you ask some questions that he seems to want to talk about. I don't know what they would be this year, but I think we're going to have questions about Russell Wilson. We're going to have questions about Jalen Hurts. We're going to have questions about those 3 first-round picks and whether they'd be willing to trade them, where they're looking.
Mag and Mag Birds 365 Combine Kickoff Get-Together Day here with John McMullen and Jody McDonald. We are joined by one of our esteemed colleagues. He's only been covering the Birds for decades, doing it these days for Philly Mag, writing great national stuff for the 33rdteam.com, including a Combine article that Johnny Mac raved over yesterday. I said, shoot, I guess I got to read Domo, which I did. And he was right. It was a very good Combine article. Paul Domowitch joins us here on Birds 365. Hello, Domo.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Yeah, that was a great intro. Come on. Did you love that, Jody? I had to read Domo. You blame Jody. I told him to do it.
The kind words, John.
Well, let's start there because it was a great piece and everybody should check it out at the 33rdteam.com. Has the Combine outlived its usefulness? So I'll start there. Has it outlived it? Because I think, Sean McVay's not going again. Kyle Shanahan's not going. Robert Saleh's not going. These are NFL head coaches that aren't going to the stinking Combine.
Yeah. I mean the important GMs and scouts have been telling us for years. The most important part of this is medicals, and the measurables, and we've kind of always raised an eyebrow, but it's true. When I say it's outlived its usefulness, the workouts are not going to go away because now it's a national television event. So the league. But what I think we might see happen is it's just going to become a separate thing where you might have cash prizes to get these guys to go out to LA or someplace to participate in workouts that would turn into basically a contest, and then you would still have the medicals and the measurables someplace else, plus the pro days. I mean, the pro days are why this thing has kind of become may have outlived its usefulness, because players prefer to work out at their pro days. It's a more comfortable environment. They're getting out of their own bed in the morning. They're throwing, if they're a quarterback, they're throwing to their own receivers instead of guys they had never met until they got to the Combine. So, that's why it may have outlived its usefulness.
All right. Maybe I'm old school, but maybe I'm right too. As I just said to John before you joined us, Tomo, the reason why I still like the Combine, and if I were a talent evaluator, I would still want the Combine and value the Combine. It's like playing a road game. And there was a big kerfuffle about how they were going to actually do this year's Combines. The whole bubble thing was a bit much. The NFL bit off more than it could chew and had to back off that position pretty quickly when challenged. But, I want to know, can a guy deal with not perfect settings? You got to do that on the road. You get on a plane. You got to fly across the country. You got to stay in a hotel. The hotels they stay in are probably pretty damn comfortable beds, but you get the point. I don't want them to be able to set all the players to dictate all the terms of how they're going to show off for me. Yeah, it's great that they have pro days, but pro days are so player friendly and they have so many things that are set up exactly by them. Tell me how a guy works out. Tell me how a guy does his job when it isn't ultimate settings. That's why I like the Combine, and I hope it never goes away.
Yeah, I mean, you guys read the story. Some of the complaints by the agents about the Combine kind of come off as diva-like. I mean, not having their nutritionist there, not having their own strength coach there when they're doing the 225 bench, a cold environment because they have to walk across the street from the hotel to a dome, which is 72 degrees, so I don't know where the cold comes in other than the walk.
Oh, that walk is tough, Domo. I was waiting for the green M&Ms only.
Yeah,
you got to have the green M&Ms.
Exactly. I mean, John, you remember the days when, I mean, agents have forever been telling these guys not to work out there because they didn't think the conditions were optimal. I mean, I mentioned in the story that they went through it at a time. They kept changing the surface that they ran the 40 on because the players were complaining it was too slow. So they were trying to entice them to work out there by getting a faster surface, things like that. So, I mean, you're right, Jody.
Now, Dama, one of the issues I have with the combine is sort of the unintended consequence of they made it this big thing. They turned it into this, and I said it's created almost a cottage industry. And then, hey, I like all these people covering the draft as much as anybody, but you have these kids playing college football, and then they're about to enter the draft, and they spend their entire spring, specifically working out, not for football, but to make sure they have a good 40 time, or they, if you're an offensive lineman, you can get your 225 up to 35. And, if people know in the old days, Deion Sanders, he just showed up and ran faster than everybody else. And you knew, well, this guy's stinking fast. He's not training to be a track star to get ready for the combine. How did people talk at all about the unintended consequence of making this thing such a big event, turning it in a negative direction when it comes to evaluation?
Well, I mean, the league likes what it's turned into because all they care about are people that are going to watch it on TV. They put all the drills or almost all the drills in prime time now. It gives them it gives them a bridge from the Super Bowl to the draft now, where people can focus on football and not think about Jody's favorite pastime, baseball.
They don't have to worry about that.
Now, you're right about the unintended consequences. They were, these guys are being taught by track coaches at their training centers how to, how to get off to a quick start to run a good 40. Which, what does that have to do with when you line up on Sunday once you're playing football? So it seems like the league is starting to adjust some of these drills to be more football focused, mostly the position drills, the movements, things they're going to do on the field. They're using GPS more now so that, they'll get times on what these guys actually run in football situations rather than just that 40-yard dash. So, they're trying to offset some of that the unintended consequences that you talked about regarding the what's happening. But overall, they love it that just this thing has become such an event, and that's, for the league, that's all they care about.
Here's where I would want the combine if I were someone tied to an organization. Where else can you get face-to-face tampering out of the start of the league year? I mean, you know that all the GMs and their assistants and will be having little conversations with guys' agents who are potential free agents, and they'll mask it in, well, he's got a player coming up in the draft, and we have some consideration for the player. We want to get some. No, they're talking about potential free agents and laying groundwork for deals. It's the biggest open air tampering event that the sport has every single year. If they did away with it, where the hell would they do all their tampering?
Well, they do it on Zoom, I guess, now. But you're right, it gives them a head start. I mean, although a lot of agents, just like John had mentioned about a lot of coaches not being there this year, a lot of agents aren't going because apparently they're having their, they always have their an annual agents meeting there at the combine. And this year, I guess they're doing it on Zoom, which is going to discourage a lot of these agents from actually being there in person. So, but I mean, every year you would always see, the Eagles people.
Damo, I'm sorry. Damo, hold on. Let me interrupt here. I don't. You've lost me. The agents who fought for it to be non-bubbled because they want the players to have absolutely everything. They're going to Zoom because COVID.
I don't want to go.
Why the hell are they? Why aren't they in Indianapolis? They want the players to have freedom to do whatever they want, but for them, they'll just have their meeting via Zoom. That doesn't add up to me.
Well, the union runs the meeting, so they're in charge of that. But yeah, you're right. But a lot of the agents, their main focus for being there is protecting their clients from getting stolen by another agent. For years, it would be hilarious. I remember going back to the day. My first combine was 1987. I was the only guy there from the media. But in those first few years, you would see fights in the lobby. I mean, well, fights as far as two agents fighting, which is basically like, hold me back. You'd see Drew Rosenhaus fighting with some guy in a long leather coat over, who stole whose client and things like that. So that's usually their main focus of going there. And that's kind of one of the main reasons they were upset over the bubble that was initially going to be used, because they wouldn't have had contact with their clients during the combine.
Yeah, it is interesting from an agent's perspective, because I think, when whatever the number was, when they threatened to boycott, it was, pretty significant, 150, I forget, whatever it was. But I think it was 12 agents. So, the power, there's so few agents. There's these high-powered agencies, and you're talking about 12 guys, so the fights are not as exciting because you see the same guys fighting over and over again. But yeah, from the perspective though of evaluation, and Jody and I were talking about this, and everybody, and part of it, and I get it. Sean McVay, everything Sean McVay does now, Jody's risking getting banned from the NFL by criticizing Sean McVay.
Not scared.
But there are other guys, and Kyle Shanahan obviously is well regarded as well. Robert Saleh, obviously, is a Kyle Shanahan guy, so they're not going. You mentioned some of the agents aren't going. Part of it is Zoom, part of it is virtual. Is there any sort of danger does the league see from, or are they just completely focused on the television vehicle, and they don't care about the other stuff? They only care about people tuning in.
Yeah, I mean, the league itself, I think that's all they care about. The people in New York, the owners, they just want to make this. I mean, it's all about the bottom line, and anything that makes this league more popular, and now will get people to gamble and everything else. They're focused on now. It's obviously different for the football people. I mean, they want to get as many looks as they can at these guys. But if you're a coach, going here to watch a guy run a 40, you've got film you can watch these guys on. Now you can do you're allotted. I forget the new rules, but they have a limit on the interviews at the combine, but they've also added a layer of interviews with players on Zoom now. So you can do everything on Zoom with a guy that you could do in a room, including test him on, because test him on a whiteboard and things like that. That I don't know the mechanics of how you do that on Zoom, but it can be done. So if they don't have to travel, they don't want to. I think the coaches mostly liked Indianapolis for, so they could go get a steak at St. Elmo's and drink in the hotel bar most of the night.
Yeah.
So,
as I said to John earlier, if you're that motivated to watch tape, go up to your room. Don't go to St. Elmo's. But
you got to go to St. Elmo's, Joe.
Well, I went to St. Elmo's when I was out there for the baseball winter meetings one year. It was a good steak, but if I've got work to do, if I had to prep for the next day show, I would have stayed in my hotel room.
Peer pressure.
I'm not buying into the. It's not what it used to be. Here's where I think it's still key, because you're going to get drafted. Somebody's going to take you, and the other 31 teams are going to become the enemy, except if you have a long memory. And if you have a coach that in the interview process that you kind of liked, at some point a guy may become a free agent and he could say, well, no, I like playing for that coach. If all things are equal and I can play for this coach rather than that coach, even that little 1%, Damo, maybe I'm narrow focusing this, but I always want to get an edge any way you can. And the combine is a place where you can get an edge in team building.
Yeah. And also, the fact that this has become a national primetime event now has made a lot of these guys want to compete at the combine because they can be seen by their family, by everybody. I mean, they like being on TV as opposed to, for years, the league had to convince these guys or tried to convince these guys, you're getting it better to get 2 bites at the apple as far as your workouts than just one. If you don't compete at the combine and go to the pro day and you do poorly, that's your time. The league tried to convince these guys that, we're going to take your best times. We're going to take your best vertical jumps. The agents would say, yeah, that's baloney. If all 32 coaches, GMs, and owners are in Indy, you perform poorly there, they won't forget that. So it's kind of like who you believe there. But I always felt that, if I were there, one of the invitees, I mean, I'd rather, if I can compete twice and I believe they're going to take my best score, why would I only do it once?
Right.
When you could get sick the night before your pro day, anything could happen that would affect that. So I wouldn't want it to come down to that when my career's on the line.
Well, I brought up Orlando Brown because I think, or Orlando Brown Jr. Because recently there's a kid who, to bet at the combine. I think he ran like a 5.85. I mean, just a disaster. And he did like 18 reps on the bench. And he turned in from a potential first-round pick to a third-round pick. And then, people in Philadelphia, I automatically go and to Mike Mamula, maybe the first sort of combine star. Last year was Micah Parsons a little bit. Just so much better. The workouts themselves, do they mean that much unless you're that outlier? Unless you're like a superstar or you do so much worse than everybody thought, people start thinking, all right, we gotta look at this kid and see what's going on. Mm-hmm. The in between, the guys and that's the vast majority, they kind of know what they're going to do, and if they do it, how much do the workouts really mean?
Yeah, I think you mentioned Orlando Brown. I mean, I think he was the exception with regard to highly regarded guys who wet the bed and fell. I think mostly the combine and these workouts help guys who are mid-round, are pegged mid-round, then go there and maybe run a 4.4, 4.3, jump through the sky, really perform well and help themselves. I think it's mostly a positive effect for guys like that. I think if they compete and do what pretty much people expected of them, which, like, say you're a corner and you run a high 4.5, you're going to go where they probably had you pegged off the film. So for those guys, I think it helps working out at the combine or the pro days as opposed to hurting them.
Dama, let's get Eagles specific, and a guy like yourself who went out there for years to cover the Eagles while watching the combine. They're going to have their fair share of Eagle beat guys out there, although I don't know how they're going to get by without McMullen. But they will. What number question from the Eagle beat guys when Howie Roseman has his media availability tomorrow? What number question should be, Howie, and about your contract? Because we're a couple weeks away from him potentially being a lame duck general manager. If you were on the beat and you were there, would that be your question? If you had the leadoff spot, would you be the first guy to go? And Howie, we got to ask you about your contract. How quickly should that question come, and what do you think Howie's answer is going to be?
He'll say the typical, just like I do with players, I don't talk about contract situations. So it wouldn't be the first question I'd ask because there's no mystery.
The answer, yeah.
Yes, there's no mystery that he's staying or that he's getting a new contract. So, but you still got to ask it at some point. There's enough time with him at the combine and few enough people that you're able to ask multiple questions. So I would ask it at some point if it were just me. But again, it wouldn't be the top question. I mean, you want to find out, you want to get him on the record again about what he said about Jalen Hurts being his quarterback in 2022 to follow that up with, the Russell Wilson rumors, things like that, and then get into – they don't usually tell you anything about players there. They used to. I mean, you could actually get a pretty good, decent comment on an evaluation on a guy. Now they won't go there. And the problem also going to the combine and asking questions about the draft and the players there is everything is dictated by what they do in free agency first. If they address some positions in free agency, it's going to change their draft strategy. So it kind of, you don't get a lot from Howie there unless you ask some questions that he seems to want to talk about. I don't know what they would be this year, but I think we're going to have questions about Russell Wilson. We're going to have questions about Jalen Hurts. We're going to have questions about those 3 first-round picks and whether they'd be willing to trade them, where they're looking, the strength of the edge rush class, things like that will be the questions that'll be first and foremost asked of him.
Tomo, how about the personnel department? I mean, it's taken a pretty big hit right before the draft in that Ian Cunningham's now in Chicago, Brandon Brown's with the Giants. Andy Waddle's going to be here, but he got an interview to be the GM of the Steelers. Kevin Colbert's going to stay until after the draft, so that wouldn't be till later. But look, the Eagles are deep. They have one of the biggest personnel departments in the NFL, and I just, when Cincinnati got to the Super Bowl and I saw it's basically, Duke Tobin and 3 interns, the Eagles go 21 deep. 21 deep they were when Brown and Cunningham were here in the scouting department. Big deal? Not a big deal? Losing guys like that?
Yeah, I mean, you suffer enough hits, it starts to take its effect. I'll be interested to see what they do. I think it was on this show a few weeks back. One of you guys asked me about Mike Mayock.
Yeah,
and
Jody
I kind of said, I didn't think Howie would go there because I thought he would be threatened a little bit. After thinking about it, I'm not so sure because he's done this before. The John Dorseys and the people that might threaten him. I mean, the difference is Mike's a Philly guy, popular, and but he's he didn't. I mean, he had some poor drafts in Oakland / Vegas that kind of led. I mean, they were part of the reason he was fired, not largely the reason, but I think he's a guy that Howie would benefit from bringing in some capacity, or at least as an advisor, and do with him like he did with John Dorsey, where you have him watch film. I'm sure Howie, just like Laurie does with coaches, he's got a list of people so that when things like this happen, and I mean, I don't think Andy Weidl's going anywhere, but maybe Pittsburgh hires him, but I just don't see that.
It's a Pittsburgh guy, Damo. Pittsburgh guy started there.
Yeah, I know, and they like him. I mean, that's why he got the interview. I think they have some names, probably some young people, up and comers that Howie would like to hire if the opportunity arises and he has some openings or he just wants to hire them. So it's a concern, the hits he's taken with regard to his personnel staff, but he's done I got to say he's done a pretty good job of finding people. I mean, he's got good people on his staff. We can question some of his draft picks and who was responsible for them and how much of the blame lies with him. But he's also had some good picks, and it doesn't concern me that he won't be able to replace anybody he loses.
I download with Mac and I doing this every day, and me reading his Philly Boys columns. John has pretty much laid 2 things out for me. 2 things you can expect not to happen in this upcoming draft. Number 1, Eagles are going to take a linebacker in the first round because, it hasn't happened in decades. And number 2, Howie Roseman's not going back to wide. He can't go wide receiver in the first round for 3 straight years. He just can't do it. And he's probably right about both of those 2 things. But if he's wrong about one of them, which is it going to be? That the Eagles will take a linebacker in the first round, or Howie will, if they keep all 3 picks, say, I still have a need at wide receiver. And that, of course, could be somewhat dictated by if they strike out in free agency and landing a wide receiver, if he's kind of up against it. Which has got a better chance, as small as that percentage may be of happening? Eagles take a wideout or Eagles take a linebacker in the first round?
I'm going to go with the second one. I agree. I think their preference is to find a wide receiver to pair with Devontae Smith in free agency. But if the circumstances don't make that happen, if they're asking for too much money, if somebody else jumps in and signs them, it would not surprise me to see them use, if they keep all three of those picks, right, to use one of them on a wide receiver. Daniel Jeremiah was asked this question on the conference call with reporters late last week, and the name he brought up was Garrett Wilson, the Ohio State wide receiver. Said he brings to the table kind of a combination of a guy, a power guy and a speed guy. I mean, he's about 6 foot, 190 pounds. But so getting back to the original point, though, that would be the one I'd pick. I still don't think it's likely. I think they'll get one in free agency, but I think that's more likely than the linebacker in the first round.
All right, for me, Dom, I'm going to go percentages with you. I want a percentage that the Eagles actually take all three of those first-round picks in this draft. And then I want a percentage that one of them is an edge rusher, which I think is 100%.
yeah, at least one edge rusher. Yeah. I'm going to go 50% on them keeping all three because everything's connected to something else here. I mean, whether they keep the 3 picks is connected to whether they go get a veteran quarterback, which they say they're won't. But I don't necessarily know if that's true or not. But if they don't, you would think you'd want to move one of your first round picks to next year, so you have an extra one next year. When if Jalen Hurts does not turn out to be the future, you can get a quarterback next year in a deeper draft of quarterbacks. So that's why I'd say 50%. And on the edge rusher, 100%. I mean, it just, all the pieces fit. They're not going to get the first 2 guys. But there's 3, 4, 5 guys that are going to be right there between 15 and 20 that they can have their pick at. So I think that's almost a sure thing.
All right, Damo, free agency starts in just over 2 weeks from now with the start of the league year. And then you've got another month and change, 6 more weeks you got to wait before the draft. Will Derrick Barnett sign with anyone during that 6-week period? Or is he going to have to wait for the teams to go, yeah, we kind of like you, but we'll get back to you the first week of May after the draft is over and done with? Is somebody going to step out and say, no, we really like Derrick Barnett and get him signed? Or is he going to have to sit around and wait till after the draft?
Well, I don't think anybody's going to stand up and say, I really like Derrick Barnett right now. But, it depends on what he and his agent think. I mean, are they looking for a 1-year deal and a chance to prove that he can play someplace else and then work on a long-term contract next year? If that's the case, maybe somebody signs him early. My guess is he hangs around for a while and then ends up signing a 1-year deal, because nobody's going to give him, a lot of money and a lot of years based on what we've seen from him.
All right, last one from me, Damo. We got to talk about the quarterback. Before that, make sure you read Damo at the 33rdteam.com, especially that combine piece. Celebrate the start of the combine by debating its usefulness moving forward. But as far as Jalen Hurts, one thing we talk about, and a lot of people bring up, and I think short term, it makes a lot of sense. Look, if you trade for Russell Wilson, if he happened, there's so many hurdles. Seattle has to say, we want to trade him. Then he has to say, okay, I'll accept a trade to Philadelphia. Then you have to give significant assets. And people bring up what you would have to pay Russell Wilson or just Deshaun Watson or somebody of that nature, which is legitimate. And Jalen Hurts is set to get, I think, $1.6 million this year. But Howie's got to think about things in 2-3 year windows. Decision time is coming up on Jalen Hurts. This is it. After this year, then you got to make a decision. I brought this up to Jody. If he has the similar type years he had this year, say statistically, a lot of big plays, maybe you're 9-8 first round and out in the playoffs, just a good Pro Bowl alternate, just a good solid quarterback, but not a star quarterback. The going rate for that is going to be $30 million a year. And all of a sudden, there's no more cost effective, and you got to make a serious decision on Jalen Hurts. Plus, you have the 3 first-round picks. You don't have that every year. Does all of that create a bigger sense of urgency than we think for Howie Roseman this offseason to make a decision at the quarterback position?
Well, I mean, I think he can afford to wait until after next season to make a decision, because this is Jalen. This will be Jalen's 3rd year, so he wouldn't. So
he's got one more year. He's got one more year.
He wouldn't be able to become a free agent as a 2nd-round pick until after the 2023 season. Correct?
Yeah,
correct there?
But if as you see with the 2018 class, Jordan Mailata, Josh Sweat, Dallas Goedert, Vontae Maddox, you get that extension before. If he plays at that level, and we have 2 Pro Bowl alternate seasons, we have 2 playoff appearances. His agent, you saw Kyler Murray's missive. You see what's going on in Arizona. His agent's not going to say, okay, we'll play out the 4th year of our rookie deal. He's going to want that extension.
Well, the worst case scenario with a quarterback in this league right now is a Baker Mayfield type of situation. You don't know what you got. You get to the end of his contract. You don't think he's a franchise player, but you might not. He might be better than pretty much what you're going to be able to get out there, unless you give away the bank. So you've got to decide. Well, do we pay this guy more money than he's worth and believe we can win with this guy, or do we go look somewhere else? And that ultimately will be a decision they'll have to make on Jalen. When I look at this particular situation, I mean, Jalen improved this year. I believe he'll improve next year. But what we don't know, what Howie doesn't know, is what's his ceiling. I mean, is he just going to end up being a very good quarterback, a decent quarterback who can also be a factor as a runner, or is he not going to be that? And Howie needs, and that's why Howie gets paid the big bucks. I mean, because he's kind of got to project that now a little bit. I think he'll sit tight. I think he'll wait, see what he sees next year before making this decision. And if he has draft picks, he can always draft a guy next year. But you get back to the Russell Wilson situation here, and with Howie, we just saw the Rams win a Super Bowl, going all in. The big trade with the quarterback, giving away your draft picks. Matthew Stafford helps him win a Super Bowl. You can argue, whether he was the main factor or not, but and Howie sometimes is influenced by things like that. So does he say we can do the same thing with Russell Wilson? But the Rams had the other pieces for the most part. The Eagles don't. They have to rebuild an entire defense. If you trade away 2 or even all 3 of your first-round picks this year, how do you rebuild that defense? So that's my reluctance, even if I didn't fully believe Jalen could be a franchise quarterback, is, they're not a team right now that can, if Russell Wilson comes here, is probably going to win the Super Bowl in the next year or 2, like the Rams were capable of doing with the Goff-Stafford trade. So that would make me reluctant to pull the trigger on a deal for Russell Wilson right now. Russell Wilson's probably he's got probably 4 more Pro Bowl level years left at least. But I still don't want to trade 3 first-round picks for a 34-year-old quarterback.
All right, Damo, last one for me. I'll wrap on this. You're in a unique situation to be able to be asked and then answer a question like this. Your quasi-retired. You're not on the beat every single day, but you're still covering the Eagles for Philly Mag and the whole league for 33rd team. Let's say your boss gets in touch with you from the 33rd team and says, hey, Domo, we do real well with clicks south of the border. And the Eagles and the Cardinals are playing in a Studio Azteca, the stadium down there in Mexico City. We need you to go down there a couple days in advance. Get some Eagle fans who went down to see the game. Give us the feel of how the return to Mexico, because no COVID game last year, plays in Mexico this year. If they offered you that assignment, would you say yay or nay?
I'd say nay.
Come on, great Corona down there. Real life Corona.
We're getting fake Corona? Is that what we're saying?
I've kind of gotten used to not getting on an airplane, Jody, and
it's nice.
Like
that part's nice.
Yeah.
Has your passport lapsed?
It has not.
Okay. Well,
I think I still got a couple more years
they
left
might not make it a question. They might make it a demand. And I'm sorry if anyone from the 33rd team is listening and you get stuck with this assignment next year.
With all due respect to the people that run 33rd team, given what they're paying me, I don't think they're going to ask me to go to stadium.
Damo, no, you like us. We'll be in front of the TV watching some of the combine stuff. We can build it up. We can tear it down, whatever else, but it's going to be on TV and it's Eagles content. So we will be taking it in. We appreciate you sharing Eagles content with us today. Thanks, bud.
Thanks for having me, guys. Take care.
Well, Domowitch, 33rdteam.com and Philly Mag covering the Eagles here with us on Birds 365. All right. I threw it out.